Welcome everybody back to the After Dark Show. I'm Don Rogers. I'm really happy to have my guest on again. He was on the first season a couple of times, and I basically call him the best friend that I've never met in physicality. He's Steven Stathis from BG Cast, and I just absolutely find our conversations fascinating. Like him and I have had very, very similar understandings and existences, and it's just one of those people that I enjoy so thoroughly. Like I could do a show once a month with this guy, and I just want to thank him again for coming on again. So Stephen, thank you for coming back on After Dark, and it's good to have you back.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's great to be back on. I mean, we've done our BG Cast After Dark renditions where, it's our shows, but it's good to be back on, man. I'm grateful you're having me back on. And I know we got a lot of really cool things to break down and talk about tonight, especially things like the invisible college, medical hexing, you name it, dude. I'm game for anything. But no, dude, thank you. You are the best friend that I have not met physically either. You and Spinja are like two of my favorite people on this planet, man. So yes, it's good to be back.
Yeah. And Spinja's in the chat already, and Diana's here. And so, yeah, people are already here and ready to listen. So one of the things I did want to get into, it was something you and I started talking about before, was two things: is human archetypes and epigenetics, right? Because those are two things that I've been looking into. I'm going to steal your saying again, have had half a butt cheek in, because there's some very interesting things, and I'll wait till we get into them to get at it. But I think the best way to start off is, would you be able to like run down what are the 12 archetypes?
Well, there's as far as the 12 archetypes go, I'm going to be 100% honest. It's been a while since I've touched on that. But I do know the hero, I do know the fool. And I actually haven't been looking into those as much lately. But as far as epigenetics goes, I actually know quite a bit on that. And if you want to dive into that, we absolutely can. But no, dude, epigenetics is a very real thing. We have the capability to actually alter our DNA and change our physical structure. And one of the biggest things that happens during our spiritual evolution that a lot of people negate is we go through physical changes as well during this. And how that happens is, at least in my opinion, is when we connect with the divine spark within us, and we start to cultivate that bridge between the divine and the physical. What starts to happen is we undergo these frequency changes in our DNA structure. And I mean, a lot of people talk about the crystalline DNA. A lot of people talk about, the 12-stranded helix DNA that we could potentially tap into and access. Those are all definitely possibilities. But one of the things we have to understand is, as we evolve consciously, our bodies are going to follow suit. And we have the ability to choose through the habits that we have to express certain genetic expressions within us as well. And so, I mean, a good example is, if you have healthy habits, you take care of yourself on a physical and a mental and a spiritual level. What you're going to do is you're going to start unlocking a lot of these genetic expressions. We have a lot of things called junk. We have junk DNA in us, supposedly, right? And I mean, there's a lot of studies that show that. But when we start to take better care of ourselves and cultivate ourselves spiritually, we start to kind of tap into this junk DNA just a little bit, and a lot of people say it might be extraterrestrial, or interdimensional in origin, which I do think so. I think there's a little bit of a history to us, as both you and I have talked about on this show before, that, it's we know it on the inside. It's hidden. It's not hidden. I mean, we know it on the inside. And it's starting to come to fruition. I mean, we're starting to get the puzzle pieces to our actual origins that are starting to surface all the time. But I'll digress and say that absolutely, man, not only will you undergo physical changes, through spiritually during your evolution, you're going to undergo them physically as well. And that's something we all need to prepare for. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who is having throat pains and throat issues. And she is in kind of her, she's within like, her early, I don't want to say early awakening stages, but she's been in it for about, I think about 5 years or so. And then her sister is also having awakened too, but she's having all of these physical symptoms coming out of this. And thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. So the number one thing we have to realize is the medical industry and the health industry right now are two very big businesses, right? And even the natural health industry, even like the sports and health and fitness industry, are very big businesses. And one of the biggest things I talk about on my show a lot is we're having spells casted upon us constantly in this reality. I mean, one of the biggest lies I hear constantly portrayed is, your testosterone is going to decline. Like there's absolutely nothing you can do about it after the age of, they're saying now the late 30s. There's some studies that say late 30s, early 40s, your testosterone is going to decline, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. That's the farthest thing from the truth. You can keep and maintain healthy testosterone levels all the way up into your 60s, even potentially further, if you just take care of yourself, eat healthy whole foods, have a positive mindset, positive mental health. And if you exercise and you just you check the content you intake, I mean, you're not intaking all of this fear, and you're keeping yourself in a positive frequency. And that's how you can maintain these testosterone levels all the way up into your 60s or potentially later. So one of the biggest things we have to overcome and understand that there's very much about our health, our body, our genetics that could be absolutely false. And that's where it ties into casting spells in this reality, because we're in a consciousness-based reality, and consciousness creates our reality. So I use this kind of analogy to break it down. You look at how since we've had civilization, now if we're going by consensual history, so let's say about like 10,000 BC, 9,000 BC, something along there, and you have the people who have always looked to the select few for the bigger questions in life, or the answers to the bigger questions in life, such as the universe, health, where we're from, the nature of our origins, things like that. And it's very possible that these people could have been not forthcoming with the truth when it comes to that. We carry that into today, to this current day and age, and we still listen to these head authority figures on health. We know that the healthcare system is a Masonic arm, an arm of the invisible college. Their job is part of manufacturing and doctoring reality. I just saw Spinja's comments. So what about when your body looks better now in your 40s than when you were at a gym rat in your 20s, asking for a friend? Well, my biggest thing, yours, is that who she's talking about? Well, honestly,
I was leaning into a dad bod, and you and I got talking about nutrition. And dude, I used to hit the gym 4 to 5 times a week, sometimes 2 a days. And yeah, I was bulky, I was stocky, but I went from dad bod to buff just by changing my eating.
well,
Like I have 4 of my 6 abs, like solid, and I haven't done a damn sit up. So it really does work. What you're saying is correct.
Absolutely, man. Well, that's also too, man, because you shifted your perspective since your 20s too. Because like in your 20s, I guarantee you were not where you are spiritually. And that even ties into what I was saying at the beginning of the show. When we cultivate that spiritual connection within us, and we cultivate that divine bridge in our bodies, what ends up happening is we go through these physical changes. And just like you, I look at myself in my 20s and I look at myself now, and I'm just completely shocked at how, hey, Jamie, how's it going? I'm just completely shocked at how I've not only look better than I did back then, I've somehow maintained my youthfulness. I mean, I just turned 37 at the beginning of this week. So, I know I'm still young, don't get me wrong, but a lot of the people I know that are 37 that aren't on their evolution, they're either not in great shape, they're balding, they look older than I do. So I think really, Don, what that's attributed to is your spiritual evolution and the fact that you have come as far as you have, and you have grown in your consciousness and in your awareness, and that has transferred into your body.
Absolutely. And I have, over the last 2 years, gained an entirely different perspective and respect for the vessel that I am the pilot of. Because, like, I'm not gonna lie, I beat the hell out of this thing like it owed me money for about 45 years, right? I did terrible things to this thing, and I'm surprised to put up with my shit, right? So the transformation that's gone, especially in like the last 6 months when you and I got into nutrition, is just nuts. And I thank this every day because I'm still here. I didn't die in November, so yeah.
No, absolutely, man, absolutely. Well, that's the thing too, and like one of the biggest things I've kind of been going to bat with lately is there's still a lot of people in the spiritual community who believe that the physical and the spiritual are separate. There's a deviation. And kind of where that all originated from was, there was a lot of gurus of old who would state that, that the physical and the spiritual are separate. Descartes came along and said back in the days of the Renaissance that that matter and the spirit should be studied separately, therefore they are separate and all of that. But ultimately we're starting to find that that's not the case. I mean, if the all is mind and everything is of the monad and everything is of the one, that would essentially mean that the physical realm actually falls into that as well. And the best way I describe it is, the physical realm is a shadow of the spiritual realms. And you're not a soul in a body, you're a soul that has a body.
Yeah.
And that's the perspective that we should be looking at this point in time, because ultimately what we're going to have to do to really ascend, and my friend Sam talks about this very much. You've seen her on the panel before. She talks about how we have to be in tune and present within our bodies ourselves in order to ascend or to achieve totality or to move into the next stage. So ultimately, where I think that comes from is that deviation of this, people thinking that the spiritual and the physical are separate, but ultimately the physical is just a different channel on this television set that we have, of frequencies. So it's ultimately all one. So we need to start treating it as such. And that's why you have to treat your body like a temple. And that's why you do have to take care of it, because ultimately it's an extension of your consciousness. It's an extension of your soul. And there's a reciprocating effect that happens with your physical health and your energetic health. And that's why I will always say, like, if you just take care of if you're just starting off on your evolution, the first thing you should most certainly do is take care of your physical health. And if you end up taking care of your physical health, your energetic health and your spiritual health is going to increase by default. And then as you continue to work on your physical health, then you start branching off and you start doing like specialized meditation or, specialized spiritual practices to kind of complement what you're doing as far as a total body, mind, spirit health, which everybody should be doing. That's a trinity we can talk about here. But yes, no, I think that is due to people still finding it separate, but ultimately we have to understand that it is intertwined.
Absolutely. And when you brought that up, when you were talking to Diana, the body, mind, and spirit, it ended up like just registering this mantra in my head. And it was, my mind is in line with my body is in line with my soul is in line with source is in line with my mind is in line with my body. And it was so centering. And it was literally just when you said about the trifecta, I'm like, yes. And then it's connected to source. And it's like, okay, that completely resonated.
Oh, absolutely, man. And that's honestly, I know there's still some people in our conscious collective who are all about the spiritual health, but kind of in some ways negate their physical health. And the biggest thing I could say to them is that's doing them a disservice. Like I guarantee you, if you get your physical health in check, I mean, don't get me wrong, you can definitely get to a good point without, keeping your physical health in check, but you will see profound changes if you add that into your regimen, man. And that even ties into what we're talking about, epigenetics, genetic expression. You're changing the habits that you have in your life to healthy ones. And what that will do too is that will turn on different genetic expressions within you, and you'll be able to look younger at 40 years old, or you'll be able to have all of this energy at a later stage in life. So absolutely, unless you're a projector, I guess projectors need need a lot of energy. Sorry, Diane, I'm not hating, but I'm just joking. But no, but exactly, you'll have all this energy later in life, and yeah, no, exactly.
Um, just to circle back though, do you think, and we'll even throw in the invisible college here, do you think the invisible colleges uses our genetics or genomes to track our families and bloodlines? And further to that, I'm going to make this one a two-parter. You and I have both talked to Emily Moyer. She brings up an interesting point about the alchemical aspect of our genetics as well. Do you think the invisible college is fabricating people?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. I do think there's a lot of strange things that start to occur when we talk about how manipulated, altered, and doctored our reality is. I do think that, and I've talked with you about this before, there's a puzzle that I'm putting together. The puzzle is very big. I've only have a few pieces of the puzzle, and this could potentially be like I don't know, you've ever seen those like 5,000 piece puzzles, or those really massive like 10,000 piece puzzles or something along those lines. It's starting to look like this, although I could be wrong. It could be less, but the number one thing I'm starting to see is, number one, the college knows about star seeds for sure. The CIA has documentation and paperwork on star seeds. So with that being said, they know we're here. They know that we've incarnated here for a specific mission, whatever that mission may be. I have a few ideas of my own on what it possibly could be, and they definitely monitor us for sure. And I think so for some, it could potentially start at a very early age in life. But most of the time, people get grabbed up by the GATE programs and the gifted programs. That's usually when they get entered into a potential database of some kind. I'm not sure. This, of course, some of this is speculation. I'm just going off of the evidence that I do have. But we do know that the intelligence agencies, which are an arm of the college, have instilled these gifted programs in schools to look for children with psychic or psionic abilities, as they call them. And there's an obsession with blood. Okay, like a lot of awakened people have always reported, even me myself, I've had instances where it seems like egregious amounts of blood are drawn from us for whatever reason. We don't know. But my theory is that if we look at the as above, so below principle, which is one of the biggest things in my spiritual evolution that I've seen play out on multiple scales. If as above, so below just still resonates heavy with me to this day. We look at the parasite class and how they have their bloodline, right? And if we take as above, so below and apply that, it's very possible that we have a bloodline amongst us as well that they could be looking for. A lot of people talk about the Christ bloodline. Is that really a thing? Very well, it could potentially be. And I've even thrown this equation in there. Let's say Jesus did have children, whether it was with Mary Magdalene or this woman that's been surfacing named Sarah. There's still a lot I have yet to find about her. But nonetheless, let's say Jesus had 4 children and their children had children, and you couple that with the 2,000 years that we're looking at, from the supposed time Christ ascended to heaven and to now, it's very possible we could have around 144,000, give or take, in that gene pool. So they're definitely looking for something with the blood, and kind of what you said about creating humans too. So there's the Cabbage Patch Babies and the orphan trains. There was a period in the 1800s where these children were just appearing in this cabbage patch out of nowhere. There's said that there was an entity or a deity that put them there. Who knows? It's very possible that we've had some kind of high technology for a lot longer than we realize. And also, too, we have the orphan trains, too, which happened in the late 1800s all the way up until I want to say the 1920s, the 1930s at that point in time, where these children, these orphans, just were shuttled into cities on these trains. The program was actually ran by a 33rd degree Mason, and a lot of these, it's speculated that there was some kind of genetic engineering or some kind of cloning that was potentially taking place with these children, because if you look at the population of the United States around that time, and you look at the amount of children that were coming in by the train load, the math didn't sync up. It didn't make any sense. So that even ties into what you were saying. Is it possible they can create people? Absolutely. I do think that they can. We even talk about, let's even take a look at Dolly the sheep and the Raelians, the cult of Rael, and all of that. Dolly the sheep was in 1996 where they cloned the first sheep. That was probably the first public announcement of that. Could they have potentially had the technology for many years up until then? Absolutely. We see that the tech in the government sector as opposed to the civilian sector is normally around 30 to 40 years ahead of the civilian sector. So it's very possible that they could have most certainly have had cloning up until before that. And then you even had the cult of Rael, the Raelians, who were really big into cloning. And that's an interesting topic too. I mean, the cult of Rael, they believed in extraterrestrials, but they didn't believe in a universal consciousness, and they didn't believe in a God. And so they thought the only way to preserve the human race was to clone ourselves and things like that. And there was this whole big thing in the early 2000s where the Raelians were actually in Congress trying to get them to make cloning legal. There was actually some hearings that took place, but absolutely, man, I do think that they can create people, as well as creating people. Who's to say that there isn't a potential way they can simulate people as well?
And that kind of leads into another thing you and I have talked about, and I wanted to bring up. I know we didn't get too far into archetypes because I can't remember them, and neither could you. But
it's been a while. It's been a while. It's not that I don't want to talk about them. I've been so deep in Kundalini yoga, man. I've been mostly focusing on that lately.
But what I wanted to ask about is, do you think, and I think you know where I'm going to go with this, is there biological archetypes? And there's a very specific reason I bring that up. And that, again, is kind of a two-part question. Do you think there are biological archetypes in this reality? And do you think that they're predetermined to have the same type of experience?
I think it's very possible. I think there's, the universe, we talk about the fractal principle, right? We talk about how the universe is very fractal in nature. I mean, we go to the original discovery of the Mandelbrot set. For those of you who don't know what the Mandelbrot set is, it's a mathematical equation that was pumped into a computer. I don't remember exactly when, but it started to show this fractaline pattern and how the universe is self-similar, right? The divine is self-similar from the micro scale to the macro. Who's to say that a fractal cannot split into smaller fractals and have that self-similarity of the larger fractal? So absolutely, I do think there are personality and biological archetypes, and I think a lot of it also kind of plays into our human design, as well as other instances that could potentially affect maybe astrology that also come into play that can kind of present these similar experiences that people have, especially like you and I, the experiences that we've both had in our lives and the things that we've been through. Absolutely. I do think there is almost like, and I'll even kind of get into this. So I had a vision during an experience one time where I saw the birth of the physical realm, and the universe spread out, the divine spread out. It had birthed the physical realm, and it created the first 7 archetypal entities to incarnate into this physical realm, to experience it. So Source could experience its creation. And over time, these 7 archetypal entities fractalize themselves down into smaller and smaller fractals, which eventually became us. And I know you know Frank, and he's big on that too.
Yeah.
And that's something that I also feel is the case. So like, it's very possible you and I could be a fractal of the same archetypal being. You know what I mean? And this archetypal being, when it incarnates here, could need specific circumstances to occur, or it will choose specific circumstances to occur in order to lead to its awakening, in order to lead back to its unification with the divine consciousness. So, yes, dude, I do think that. Absolutely.
And just for everybody in the audience, Stephen and I have joked about this before, but when I don't have my hat on and I'm shaved properly, I could actually. Oh shit! I just lost my screen.
He's got it. He's got it.
I could actually pass for his older brother.
Oh, 100%, man. 100%.
And not only that, we both have the strange eye color with heterochromia. Like I've never met somebody with the same color eyes as me, much less the heterochromia around it. Thank you, Emily, for teaching me a new word that I understand. But no, I've seen people that look similar to me, but the more you and I talk, it's like, okay, we've had very similar upbringings, very similar rough patches. We look the same. Like, it's just messed up when you start to do the comparison.
Well, you know, the other thing is potentially too, you know, and I'm going to go out and say this, like it could be, you know, potentially starseed angel seed thing, you know, and I've noticed that's the other commonality I've noticed in that puzzle piece as well, is a lot of us have these eyes. You know, they're like either a bluish hazel or a hazel color, and they can potentially change colors, and they heterochromia being an aspect of it as well. And what's very interesting about that for me is didn't I didn't really have that heterochromia until I started to really get involved in my spiritual awakening, and then I really started to notice it emerge as I evolved further. So it's very possible that you know, a lot of us, you know, came here from higher densities, higher realms, to incarnate here on this, in this planet, on this, in this existence, to assist and facilitate with terraforming this planet into the higher frequencies that we need to, you know, in order to establish a foundation for, you know, the new earth to manifest out of. So I joke, man, that people like you and I, potentially, we're already alive in a higher dimensional existence, and we're just potentially projecting our consciousness here, you know, into these avatars that we're having this human experience with. So I think that could potentially also have something to do with it as well. But yeah, no, I agree with you, man. I think there's a lot of similarities, and we see how the universe is fractaline in nature. And like I said, it's very possible you and I are of that, a fractal of that same higher archetypal being.
That's what I was alluding to, and I just wanted to get it out of the way. But this is actually my buddy. We call him Cheech for the purposes of the show. He's waiting for a double lung transplant, and he knows you're very smart when it comes to energy. He's asked, if you take someone's organs, can you feel the energy from the donor? Because he's going to be getting a double lung transplant.
Well, Cheech, I'm going to be sending you some healing and positive vibes. Yes, you are. You are going to feel the energy from the double lung transplant. I myself have never had a transplant, but I know somebody who has. My aunt, my late aunt, she passed away back in 2004. Bless her. She was an amazing woman, and she ended up having a heart transplant in the late 90s. And she survived. She succeeded. Funny enough, as weird as it is, it was actually Dr. Oz's team who did the heart transplant on her before he was like a famous TV star. But what was funny is when she got the transplant of this heart, she started to dawn like some new personality traits. So she started to dawn cravings for certain foods that she didn't like before. I remember her telling me as a kid, she's like, I've never craved a bologna sandwich so much in my life. Like, she's like, and she couldn't stand bologna. Like, I've known my aunt since I was born, but she'd always say to me, I'm just craving a bologna sandwich. And she's like, it's so weird. Like, I've never liked bologna, but like now it's like I love it and I want to eat a bologna sandwich like every day. And, so yes, you're going to have an energetic effect. There is the essence of that individual. Because one of the biggest things we have to understand too is when we're talking about consciousness and awareness, a lot of people get stuck from here to here, right? But your whole entire body is your consciousness and your awareness, from your fascia to your organs. I mean, even to your skeleton. I mean, the skin, everything is awareness. And that's one of the biggest things I want to even just say to the spiritual community right now, is to stop getting stuck here. It's everywhere. Your whole body is your consciousness. Like, if you stub your toe, it hurts, right? That's awareness. That's awareness of pain. And it's not on your head. It's not from your neck up. It's on your foot. So yes, you're going to experience something from that for sure. And I'm going to be honest with you, but it's not all bad. I mean, you might like some of these new foods you like to eat that you might start craving that you didn't eat before. There might be some kind of knowledge in that individual's essence, or some kind of something that helps you further in your evolution too. It also could be a contribution to your evolution. So you can definitely look at it that way also. But yes, you're going to experience stuff. Just be open to it and understand that it's all part of the growing process. And it's going to be what keeps you alive here with us, man. So most certainly.
Yeah, and he is a prime example. You mentioned off the top about medical hexing. This man was supposed to be dead over 2 years ago, and that's like right out of his doctor's mouths. And one of the first things they did, I love the country I live in, they offered him the maid service.
What's the maid service? Tell me.
Medically assisted induction of death.
Oh, okay. So that well, I give props to you, Cheech, for not taking that road and sticking through this, and being and having the strength to continue forward with life, man. So good on you for that. But no, yeah, medical hexing, it's a real thing.
Yeah. Can you give a description of that? Because I don't know if he was there to catch your show, but I've been on this journey with him as one of my best friends for the last several years. And the amount of times I've just kind of stood back on from some of the shit they have said to this man.
Oh,
It
absolutely, man.
yeah.
Well, so all right. What I'll have to do is I'll have to break down two versions of it real quick, because we have two versions of the placebo effect. So we have the original placebo effect, which is where we can heal ourselves based on the belief that something will heal us. And to me, what this shows is, number one, our consciousness definitely creates our reality. And number two, we definitely have the ability to heal ourselves if we understand that we can. So what the placebo effect is ultimately, as a lot of people know, is you've heard it before. You'll hear it on all the pharmaceutical commercials compared to placebo. But there's actually been times where the placebo has worked better than the medication in the study itself. And it was due to the fact that the individual had the belief within them that this was going to work for them. And that's the positive end of the spectrum when it comes to this healing that we can, undergo, that we can create for ourselves. But then we have the nocebo effect. And the nocebo effect is like the negative version of that. And that's where somebody can make themselves sicker, or potentially put themselves on death's door, because they get a negative mindset or a negative mind state about what they are experiencing. And doctors have a habit of doing this. I mean, I just had somebody on the show the other day where the doctors are just telling the parents, your son's going to die, just accept it. Okay. And, one of the biggest things we learn on our spiritual evolution is the power of our belief and the power of our words, can ultimately affect our reality, our well-being. our health, things like that. So, being that we're in a consciousness based reality, if somebody does not realize that and they go to a doctor with a prognosis that they're ill, and the doctor starts to facilitate that negative mindset, what begins to happen is if the patient or the person who is sick begins to take that negative mindset on about their health, it will ultimately filter down into the body and it will start to make it worse. So, I mean, to me, these are the two most, this is the most profound evidence that we have. I mean, this dates back. I mean, there's clinical studies of this that date back into the 1800s about the placebo and the nocebo effects. And to me, it's very interesting how often overlooked they are. When it comes to how we can heal ourselves or harm ourselves and how our consciousness creates reality. And even in the studies, I mean, even in the NIH studies about the placebo and the nocebo effect, they don't know why it happens. They said it's some unknown psychological process. And for a lack of better words, it's because you're doing it to yourself. And you're either going to help heal yourself or you're going to help. And that's why you see a lot of those people, who get cancer, right, or get a serious illness. But instead of throwing up the white flag and throwing in the towel, like all of their doctors are saying, they end up ditching that. And they're like, you know what? I'm going to do what I can to live the happiest, most fulfilling and healthy life I can. And I'm going to find my own way to turn this around. And one of the biggest things that you see from these stories is you see these people recover. Like 9 times out of 10, you see these people recover. They find some way to beat this illness or whatever has happened to them. And they move on to living a healthier and happier life after the fact. And one of the biggest reasons for that was their mentality. And I mean, a lot of people, it's like, I feel like and for me, I feel like a lot of people just don't want to believe it. We're so conditioned in this world to think everything is so hyper complex, from existence to ourselves to our health. And because we are so conditioned to think everything is hyper complex in this existence, most of the time what happens is we end up giving away our power to those sources of authority because we think everything is hyper complex and we don't understand it. And we couldn't possibly understand it, and that's why we give it with our power away to these doctors, these MDs, governments, things like that, because everybody thinks it's so hyper complex. But if you go back to ancient Vedic science and you go back to ancient Vedic medicine, one of the biggest things, the number one thing in the ancient Vedic texts that states for always having a happy and a healthy life is a positive mindset and choosing happiness. Okay. And I like, to me, it's like, I think because we're so conditioned to think everything is so hyper complex here, when somebody like me comes along and says that, like, hey, if you just shift your mindset, your whole world's going to change. It doesn't register right away because of that conditioning that they think everything's hyper complex. It's like they have this subconscious thing that goes, there's no way it can be that simple. There's no way it can be that simple. And that's due to that conditioning. We're conditioned to look outside of ourselves ever since we're born for the answers to the bigger questions in life. Love, validation, happiness, all of those things. We are conditioned to think it's all hyper complex and we have to look outside of ourselves for it. But ultimately, it's not, because we know spirit is simple. And we know that the divine is simplicity. And yes, while complexity and simplicity can have a reciprocation, most of the time when you look at a lot of these esoteric things and you look at a lot of these spiritual things and when you start to digest and integrate them, you start to see that they are actually quite simple, and they're very easy to integrate into our everyday lives, and they're very easy to practice. And to me, that's one of the best kept secrets around at this point in time. So yes, man, like the medical hexing is a thing. And that's also too, because I believe that some of these doctors do know what they're doing. I believe that there is a darkness in the medical industrial complex, and it has, as my guest the other week, Katie Catalyst said. She says it is of the matrix, and when we talk about the matrix reality, the matrix reality is what I am going to say is completely artificial and not of the divine. And kind of how we break that down is we have the Maya. All right. So, we talk about the Vedic principle of Maya, which is the illusionary world. We have two Mayas. We have the Maya of nature, which, in my opinion, is of the divine. You know what I mean? Of course, you go out in nature. Nature is one of the most spiritual places we can go to reset, recharge, do all of that. Nature teaches us, there's a lot of symbolism in nature to our spiritual roots. And yes, Jamie, you can heal from everything. And the Maya of nature is of the divine. But then you get to the societal Maya. And that's the second Maya. And what societal Maya is the Maya of society. And that's what I would call the matrix system. And that is devoid of the divine spark. And all of its facets seem to be devoid of the divine spark. Or it's just a polarity of that, a dark polarity of that divine spark that we experience here that seems to be devoid of humanity, almost to an extent. So in my opinion, a lot of these doctors do know they're medically hexing people. I'm sure there's ones that don't know, but when you look at the current healthcare system on how it's profit driven, how it's greed driven, how it's almost in and of itself become totalitarian or authoritarian in nature. You trust the science, you believe the science. It doesn't matter if the math ain't mathin' or the science ain't sciencing and adding up. You still believe it and you don't question it. So yes, I do think some of these doctors do know what they're doing.
Absolutely. And I just want to touch on a couple of things. I completely agree. I do think there is a psychosomatic aspect to all healing. And I've told the
Absolutely.
story. It's why I keep my hand over my mouth. I know you guys can't even see my teeth, but I've had 2 broken teeth in the front of my mouth for months now. And I had a conversation with my body. And I know if I heard me tell this story, I think I would think I was absolutely full of shit. I had a conversation with my body deep in meditation. I asked the pain to stop after my teeth broke, and I got a message, then stop the sugar. I agreed with my body at that point in the meditation to stop as much sugar as I possibly could within reason. Of course, there's a spoonful here and there in my coffee, right? But beyond that, the pain was gone the next day, right?
Absolutely.
Now,
That's awesome.
on the inverse, people will also know that when I was 25 years old, I had a near fatal motorcycle accident. And I was told by the best orthopedic surgeon in Ontario, which is where I was living at the time, that I would never walk again. And I laughed at him. This man treated the royal family. That's how high up he is. He looked me in the face with his stupid Scottish accent and told me that I'll never walk again. And I laughed at him and rolled my ass out. 18 months later, I walked back in and
That's
left.
what I'm talking about, man.
Yeah. You don't tell me I'm not going to do something.
Well, and that's because you had that mentality, man, and he was probably definitely trying to hex you, most certainly. I mean, we even talked about how we're monitored. It's, we can't prove it. It's possible he could have known somehow what you could be and what you could become. And he was definitely trying to hex you, especially because he was treating the royal family. I mean, that person who's treating the royal family, definitely has some kind of in the know about the inner workings of reality and how our thoughts and things like that create our reality. But it was your mindset, dude. You laughed at him. You said, I'm rolling out, and then I'm walking back in 18 months later. So yes, man. And again, and also too, like you were saying, the somatic response also, most certainly a lot of illnesses. And I actually was touching with Diana on this on my Christian my Christians, my metaphysical Christianity episode that we did last Wednesday, we were talking about Christian Science. And Christian Science actually doesn't want you, if you partake in Christian Science, they don't want you to get exterior health care because they believe that illnesses are energetic defects or, not being connected to the divine spark within you, or not facilitating that connection. So yes, I mean, it's absolutely crazy. We have the ability to completely heal ourselves. And that's why, like I was saying, dude, I've just been on Kundalini yoga. I've been regulating my hormones at will now, through doing the Kundalini Kriyas. And I think one of the biggest reasons for that is, when we embark on that practice, right, what we do is we release and we stretch the fascia. Right. And what we're doing is we're mimicking the trauma response in a controlled setting. Right. So ultimately what this does is since we're mimicking the trauma response in a controlled setting and in a spiritual setting, we start to release that trauma and we start to gain an understanding of that trauma and the energy that's within us. And what that does is it starts to allow this energy that's within us, this prana, this chi, whatever you want to call it, life force energy, starts to flow through us in a more fluid way. And a lot of illnesses can come from life force blockages. They can come from energetic system blockages. And, basically what you're doing is you're doing a whole tune-up on your whole subtle body and your energetic system. So, I mean, we have the ability to heal ourselves without even going to a doctor, and we have the ability to keep ourselves in good health without going to a doctor. And that's one of the biggest kept secrets in my eyes when it comes to health. And I mean, if everybody started getting on this, man, cultivating a positive mindset, and choosing happiness every day, having some kind of meditative practice that allows you to go into that space of neutral mind and allows you to heal the energetic components of you. And also, too, just daily exercise, just daily. I mean, you could just go for a freaking 2-mile walk around the loop at your park, man. Just something every single day. It doesn't have to be what I do or anything like that. Just do that. If you can keep and eat cleanly, you know what I mean? Avoid processed foods, avoid synthetic dyes, preservatives, glyphosates, because glyphosates are really bad, man. Because I found out that glyphosate actually destroys your mitochondrial production of your endogenous DMT. And so yes, and it makes you think. We're if you look at it from that perspective, it's like we're under attack from every avenue. I just found out that the lubrication strips and razors the other day have endocrine disruptors in them, and I'm bullshitting you not, dude. I ripped all of the lubricating strips off my fucking razors. I did, and I was like, absolutely not. It's like we're under. I mean, the parasite class. If we're looking at it from that perspective, and don't get me wrong, like there's solutions. Like you learn, you become aware, and you adapt, and that's what you do. Like don't sit there in your basement and like with the blanket over you, like I don't want to touch anything. I don't want to wear anything. I don't want to put nothing on me. I don't want to do anything. It's like don't take the fear mentality with it, but educate yourself, learn, adapt. But yeah, no, I found out the lubricating strips and razors have endocrine disruptors in them, and I was like, absolutely not. Why is my testosterone always under attack in this world? Like why? Like why are they doing this? And but yeah, man. But yeah.
You mentioned DMT there, and I know you're getting very good at it. Are you able to share how you've been teaching yourself to cultivate your own endogenous DMT?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So there's a few different ways you can do it. One of the ways that I decide to do it is I do it through my cerebral spinal fluid. If you look in the contents, thank you, Spinja. I appreciate that. I've actually considered learning how to shave with a straight blade after that. I was like, ugh, like it's like me and Melissa, we stopped using fragrance everything, man. And we like no fragrant laundry detergent. I mean, we use dryer balls, the balls, not the dryer sheets, the actual balls that are like reusable and things like that. And we got rid of all the fragrance shit, man, because yes, anything that has a fragrance in it is going to have endocrine disruptors that mess up your hormones. But so back to what I was saying, though. So I do the cerebral spinal fluid route. And if you look at the contents of cerebral spinal fluid, you're going to see two things in there. You're going to see your endogenous DMT and you're going to see your endogenous cannabinoids. And actually, one of the biggest things that I'm starting to realize is your endogenous cannabinoids and your endogenous DMT actually have a synergistic effect. And it's a big reason why a lot of people, when they undergo a exogenous DMT or 5-MeO DMT experience, and they smoke cannabis maybe a couple of days later, it can reactivate that experience to an extent. And that is because I believe in our body, there is a synergy between your endogenous cannabinoids and your endogenous DMT, that they work together. So ultimately what I do is through the Kriya Yoga, you learn the chakra locks, right? And there's a couple. You have Mula Bandh, which is your root lock, which is actually the most important one when it comes to sending the cerebral spinal fluid up your spinal cavity. How do you do it? There's no beating around the bush. You gotta flex your taint, you gotta flex your anus, you gotta flex your genitals, and you gotta flex your navel all at the same time. And that is Mula Bandh, and that is locking in your root chakra. And that's the most important one. But you can take it to the next level with Uddiyana Bandh, which is a diaphragm lock almost. It's for your solar plexus. And how you do that is you exhale all the air out of your diaphragm and you lift it up into your rib cage a little bit. So that would be Uddiyana Bandh. And then you have Jalandhar Bandh, which is your throat lock, which is just simply bringing your throat to your chest and locking into your throat chakra. And then you have Ajna Bandh, which is locking your eyes into the third eye point, in between your eyes here. And basically what happens is, combined with breath work, because we know the lungs are a big area for endogenous DMT, combined with breath work and utilizing these chakra locks, what you do is you push that cerebral spinal fluid up your spine into the hypothalamus cavity. And for anybody who's seen the Eye of Ra and the Eye of Horus, and the comparisons to the brain, the HPTA, the pituitary gland, the pineal gland, that's all located in the hypothalamus cavity. And when you do these locks combined with the breath work, it sends that fluid into that cavity. So you don't need an MAOI inhibitor. The other routes of endogenous DMT cultivation, you need to activate pinoline, which is your natural MAOI, to make it work. But with this method, you just shoot that spinal fluid right in your hypothalamus cavity. You don't even have to worry about the blood-brain barrier. You don't have to worry about anything else. It just all goes right into your brain, and it's one and done. And one of the biggest things I can say to people when they first start doing this is, you're going to feel like you're going to pass out. And the reason why is you're not used to this, because for anybody who smoked endogenous DMT or exogenous, like smoked a DMT, if you take too big of a dose, what happens? You pass the fuck out. You don't even remember the experience. You're done. You black out for a little bit, and then you come to, and you might have some patterns left over, but you did too big of a dose and you can't maintain consciousness. So that's what you're going to feel like at first when you start tapping into your endogenous DMT. But over time, what will happen is your body will get used to it. It will start to, your body's very resilient. It can get used to anything you put it through. And, but your body will start to get used to it. And what you'll come to find is, instead of feeling like you're going to pass out, you're going to get a natural DMT dump. And you're going to be in hyperspace. And at first it's going to be small, like it's going to be maybe like 10 seconds, right? It's not going to be like anything when you smoke DMT at first, and it lasts like, the normal smoke DMT dose normally lasts about like 15 to 20 minutes, maybe 15, and trails on down after that. And so at first it's going to be short and sweet, but over time, as you perfect the method and you get used to the breath work and you get used to and you get better with the chakra locks and you get better at what you're doing, you're going to come to find that those releases are going to start lasting longer and longer. I had one last 2 minutes one time. Like, and I had to like take a step back and be like, holy shit, dude, I just got high off my own supply. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, but oh dude, it's very profound. And and from somebody who's smoked a DMT and somebody who's tapped into their endogenous DMT, I'm going to tell you what, I prefer the natural route better. It's less abrasive than, because when you smoke DMT, you're going from 0 to 200, like before you can even say, oh shit, you're already in hyperspace, like freaking, and it's and it can be for some people, like, it's a very abrasive experience, to smoke DMT from baseline. And that's why my preferred method was always, I would be peaking on 1/8 of mushrooms and then I would smoke DMT at the peak. And a lot of people look at me like I'm fucking nuts when I say that. They're like, they're like, what the fuck, man? What's wrong with you? And I'm like, no, dude, that's the best way to do it. Because the mushrooms take you to, so the best way I can describe it is, if you're already on a psychedelic and you smoke DMT, it's like going from 60 or 100 to 200. Right. So like you're already kind of at the launch pad already, like if you're on another psychedelic, and then it's like the equivalent. So let's say you're on another psychedelic, smoking DMT will get you to where right here. Right. But when you're sober and your baseline, you're all the way at the bottom, and you're going from like at the bottom of my chair right now in between my feet to right here. And it can be an abrasive experience. But, when you do it naturally, it's not. It like feels natural. It feels like almost victorious in a sense, because you've tapped into the sacred nectar, man. Like and that's what they call it in Kundalini and in Kriya Yoga, chakra yoga. They call it the nectar. And that's your cerebral spinal fluid. And that's why a lot of times what you'll do is at the end of a Kundalini yoga practice, you'll sit there and you'll roll your neck around. And what you're doing is you're rolling that cerebral spinal fluid all around your hypothalamus cavity. You're getting it in like every single little bit of area in there. And so I would honestly say, man, that, I prefer the endogenous route. I do. It's something special once you do it. Like I said, it feels victorious. Like you tapped into something that a lot of people haven't done, or you have even had the desire to do. I mean, you look at a lot of people in the psychedelic community, and don't get me wrong, I got much love for the psychedelic community. Psychedelics are a huge thing that contributed to my spiritual evolution, but there's too many people who just rely on the psychedelics. They rely on them for the spiritual connection. They rely on them for the healing. And most of the time, all you see people do is just repetitively use psychedelics. They're not integrating. They're not learning from the experience. They're not sitting there and actually doing the work on the back end. My guides, I went into a psychedelic experience one time, and my guides, I love my guides. Don't get me wrong. My watchers, they're hard asses with me, but they looked at me and they said, you're going to have to learn how to do this yourself. Without the help of the mushrooms or the DMT. And I was like, okay, cool. And that was like shortly after that, like, I had been working with Hanuman, the monkey god, for the past year. I got pushed into doing Kundalini yoga, and that was all she wrote. But yes, that's how you go about it, man. And that's the one thing that I dislike about a lot of DMT breathwork videos on the internet. They don't include the chakra locks. They'll have you sit there and do breath of fire or the Wim Hof method or something along those lines, and they'll have you hold the breath and all of that. But the biggest thing they're missing is you need to be locking them chakras when you hold your breath, because that's what's ultimately going to facilitate the experience.
Absolutely. And it wasn't until you told me about the chakra locks, I had found a a video by Clark Cagley, and it's a DMT breath work, and it's very effective. And I was getting a bit of pop here and there just from doing that. And then one of the times you and I were talking, I was like, oh shit, okay, so I need to be doing that. And like you said, it's about 5-10 seconds, but it's starting. I'm developing my own, and I did that for Cheech, but dude, keep your freaking oxygen on and don't overdo it, okay? Like,
Cheech, right now, hold off on the the breath work for now. Let's wait till after you're done, and you'll yeah.
Stick with the locks, and he make. Oh my god, this dude make. Anyway, we'll talk about that off.
You can also do it on an exhale. You can do it in a void hold too. That's also just as effective. I mean, so like I mean, if you're doing breath work and you exhale, and that's what we call void holds and Kundalini yoga. When you're holding your breath out on an exhale. Now, mind you, that's something you have. For me, at least, it was. I have no problem holding my breath in on a freaking inhale all day. I can hold my breath in on an inhale for probably like 2 minutes if I wanted to. The void holds were something I had to really get used to. But when you get used to them, they have pretty much the same effect. You can do it on an exhale, hold it on your breath out, and then activate the chakra locks then, and you will get a very similar effect from that also.
I'm taking notes.
The void holds are tough, man. I'm not gonna lie. Like I mean, now I can do a void hold for probably like 30 to 40 seconds. But in the beginning, dude, it was like 10 seconds, and then I would be like, like gasping for air, So it's like a process. Just get yourself used to it, and like, of course, practice makes perfect. Doing it on a regular basis is going to help you, even just a little bit each day. Like even when you're driving around, man, just do like an exhale. Like, like hold your breath out, for like 10 seconds, pulse it, inhale, then exhale, hold it out for 10 seconds, pulse it like that. And then what you can do is you can start increasing the time. Like after about like 2 weeks of doing the 10-second void holds, then increase it to 15 and then, keep working with it and get yourself used to it. And that'll ultimately help you because the void holds are nasty, bro. They took some getting used to for me.
Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing that. Before we're over an hour already, but I do want to get you to share or get your thoughts on something. We talked earlier about the invisible college, kind of like tracking people and all that. This is a Spinja question, and it's one that a lot of people have ducked. And I'll ask you, do you think the invisible college positions or directs people into certain bloodlines in order to improve control or even destroy the family?
I would say so. And I know that's an Emily thing. I know that's also too like that came from Emily. I do think so. Yes. So there's one thing that I've been resonating with a lot lately, and it's a message that's been coming to me. This isn't the first time we've attempted this timeline. And we're supposed to get it right this time. Or we're supposed to smooth it out and do it differently this time or something along. That's the message that I get. But with that being said, there is a potential. I gotta laugh at that for a minute. Yeah. There's a potential thing that the invisible college has is called a looking glass. So do I know if it actually exists? No, but when you look at how the college operates and the college acts in their manufacturing and doctoring of reality, it's very possible they could have something like this. And what the looking glass is capable of seeing the other timelines, the times that we have tried this and we have attempted this timeline per se. Do I think it is possible that they can send like handlers into people's families under the guise of like plausible deniability, or send handlers is what I would call them, into people's lives and have them potentially set them off course, try to derail and disengage them? Absolutely, man. I mean, we're talking about the complete manipulation and doctoring of reality. Like I know you heard my DMT experience on Rob's show, and towards the end of that experience, these entities, they took me and they showed me how manufactured and fabricated this reality is. And I'm going to tell you this, Don, the extent of it blew me the fuck away, and it shattered me, and it almost caused me to fragment. Because I always believed it, like, you know, and I always knew it to be the case. But to see the extent that the Matrix reality is manufactured and fabricated, yeah, no, I had to go back to the spiritual drawing board after that. I did. I had to. And in fact, I'm not even going to lie, it fucked with me a little bit to know how doctored and manufactured this reality is. And yes, there are things like that that occur. There is, I'm going to dive into conspiracy land just for a little bit. A lot of people too, there's another potential theory as to why this happens too. A lot of people know about the lower families, like the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, all of that, right? And they are just the chump change of this. In reality, is potentially one or two families at the very top, and there's speculation as to what their names are, but it's very possible that these individuals got a hold of some kind of technology that they shouldn't have, and that actually works into singing and using frequencies to create physical reality. And at this point, also, it's possible that a lot of they're bombarding us with junk frequencies or something along those lines to keep us all, like, you know, diverted and disengaged. But it's possible too, with this technology, they could have some insight or have some know-how on, you know, these people who are going to do this. Again, it kind of even ties up with the looking glass, and all of that. I mean, we look at even, you know, the trends in a lot of these families too. Like anytime somebody's experiencing, let's even take a look at target individuals for a second. A lot of targeted individuals in their family somewhere, their grandpa's a Mason, or their uncle's a Mason. There's some kind of tie to the invisible college that's located in their family. So that is also another thing that always ends up showing up too. But yes, it is not beyond them to send people into. A lot of people think that's what Yoko Ono was when it came to John Lennon, because John Lennon started to kind of wake up and become privy to stuff before he ended up dying. You know what I mean? Although he was part of the Tavistock thing, and I'm sure he knew. I think he just was getting more vocal about it at that point in time. And you know, he ended up, Yoko Ono came in his life, and everybody knows when Yoko Ono came into John Lennon's life, that was pretty much the end of John Lennon at that point. He was derailed, and that was it. But yes, I do think it's very possible they can do that, man.
So this is Lonnie, my coworker that decided to show up in the chat and play the game.
What's up, Lonnie? How's it going?
Yeah, he's funny as fuck. You'd love him. Where did all the old money or Europe money go? Like the money from Europe, I guess. What he's
the old
I'm
money.
Just butchering.
Well. In my opinion, it's in assets, and it's hidden off somewhere. One of the biggest things about these parasitic classes, these elites, is a lot of their money is in assets, even a lot of the old money. Very rarely, I mean, do you see these individuals with bank accounts. You know, these individuals don't have bank accounts. They don't deal with banks. So a lot of the old money, I mean, especially if you're talking about a lot of the gold, is most certainly probably locked away somewhere, or it's been liquidated into some kind of asset. I mean, you look at these families, man, they own like freaking 10 bedroom or 20 bedroom, like 20,000 square foot manors, dude. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you look at the Rothschild Manor, dude. It's like 20,000 square feet. It's got like 20 bedrooms. It's on like a freaking, I forgot how many acre plot of land. And, you know, and what do you got to think, man? That's at least over I'm not even going to say $1 million. That's got to be over at least 100 million, $200 million to have that's just even an aspect of it. I mean, you're talking about the richest of the richest in the world, the ones who control the money. I mean, freaking, it's stupid, because what you have is, in that case, also, Lonnie, is you have two things. You have people who create the assets. These individuals create the assets. They create the money. They create the wealth. They create that. And through creating it, they have an ultimate abundance. They can do as they please. So that's also the other thing where it went, is they created it and they can continue to create it as well. I mean, you're talking about people who literally make resources. They create resources. They also create the scarcity of the resources as well. So their money is hidden. It's in assets, or it could be, if we're talking gold or, things like that, it's probably stashed away. But also they create these assets as well. Like, they are the creators of pretty much it all. The money, the media, the scarcity lie. All of that stuff, they create it. So that's my answer to your question, Lonnie, for sure.
I think that's a good answer. And this is one you were talking about bloodlines and stuff. Spinger wrote this one down when we were talking about the archetypes. I know there's 12 archetypes and neither of us could remember them, blah, blah, blah.
Let's look it up real quick. Let's get a refresher. I'm going to pull it up real quick. Yeah. If you got time. I got time, man. I got time. Yeah, so 12 human archetypes.
But what she alluded to as well is, do you think that the 12 archetypes have something to do with the 12?
Oh, the 12 Jungian archetypes. Okay. Yes. I remember this. So you have artist, innocent, sage, explorer, outlaw, magician, hero, lover, jester, everyman, caregiver, ruler. So those are the 12 Jungian archetypes. Now I remember, because I was thinking of something different. That's why I brought up the Fool. So let's bring it up on the stage here real quick. I'm going to share it so we can all look at it.
Yeah.
Here, I just popped it up there. If you want to go ahead.
Yeah. There, hold on.
Yeah, I was thinking of something completely different when you said that. No, I know what these are. So the 12 Jungian archetypes, you have the innocent, the sage, the explorer, the outlaw, the magician, hero, lover. Hero is definitely mine. I know that for a fact. Lover, jester, everyman, caregiver, and we also have ruler. So yeah.
So where I wanted to tie that in is, do you think those archetypes are directly related to like ancestral epigenetics? Like, we're predetermined because of what's gone on through our DNA throughout history, right? We're going to be some type of help.
Well, so this is what I do think about that. I don't know about predetermined, but what I do think is we have the capacity to tap into certain aspects of this ancestral genetic memory, and also heal them, and also utilize them in our current age, and our current day, and in our current life. So, I mean, the number one thing we do have is that ancestral DNA memory from the times of antiquity and within us. So, like, whether we are the first batch of humans to walk this planet, or we are the seventh batch of humans, and that's a different story. We can dive into that if you want to, what I do think is that we can be greeted with that, yes, because you have to look at the cultural or the occult significance and the spiritual significance of blood, right? When we talk about DNA, we have a couple of different aspects to us. We have our DNA strands, but blood, that's ultimately what we're talking about, the sharing of blood. Blood is a very sacred spiritual fluid. That's why these parasitic class, they like to sacrifice people, because they know if they shed blood, because of the spiritual energy of blood and what it puts off, powerful things can happen because of that. So you take a look at blood and the energy that it has. Absolutely. If your bloodline ties into a particular archetype that has kind of existed through your lineage. And what's really funny is the hero archetype has existed through mine for quite a while. A little story about that. So I'm actually not distantly, I'm directly related. He's like a great, great, great uncle of mine to General Georgios Grievous, who actually fought the Turks out of Cyprus, Greece with guerrilla warfare. He's the whole reason the Turks left Greece. He fought them out. And so, of course, I look at that part of my history. We see the hero archetype in General Georgios Grievous and how I'm a direct descendant of him through a couple of generations. So yes, you can have a predisposition towards an archetype based on your genetic lineage. That's not to say that you don't have your genetics in your own hands, though, either. You have the capability of altering that. I mean, can you alter your archetype? Potentially. I don't see why you couldn't. You are a creator. I like mine, though. I'm happy with mine. I actually really like telling that story because it does showcase how the hero archetype has existed throughout my lineage. And I mean, of course, like, if you got like the ruler archetype and you're not about ruling, you know what I mean? You can, of course, definitely shift that, like my inner anarchist cringes at the fact of having a ruler archetype. And I say that a lot because, I'm an anarchist, and no masters, no slaves. I know a lot of people, think that I could potentially have a huge part to play in whatever's going on. I mean, yes, I do think so, but we'll have to see. But I ultimately think yes and no. I'm going to answer it with that. Like, yes, you will have a disposition to a particular archetype, but that doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to change that within yourself, or you don't have the ability to alter that into a more positive polarity of that archetype, especially talking about the ruler, who wants to have control over people. Like maybe you can transmute that archetype into the ruler of your own existence, and having rule over yourself and the ultimate control and self-mastery over yourself as opposed to other people, so I'm going to say yes and no on that.
I think that's fair. From there, I kind of want to step beyond epigenetics and right into DNA memory. And I think that's what you're talking about, because like a lot of this is memory in our DNA, why we act or feel, or you know what I mean, or develop certain ways. But just let me throw out a theory here, and I want to get your thoughts on it. I personally believe like the Akashic records are real. I believe our connection to source is real. I think connection to our ancestors and altars is real. I even think it can connect to angels. And I think what that is because all of this, everything is potentially recorded in our DNA.
Absolutely.
Right? We have the entire history and quite possibly future of our existence coded in our DNA. We already know, we just don't know. I think everything we experience is in our DNA.
I would definitely say that, because you look at the DNA, at least in my eyes, when it comes to our soul, our consciousness, the DNA would be the direct step under that. And that's how I would look at it. So like how I said that your soul has a body, right? Well, let's kind of even break it down even further. You have your consciousness, your soul, and then your consciousness, your soul is going to express itself and all of that knowledge and all of that through your DNA. But then you're going to couple that with the fact that your lineage of this physical avatar, the blood of that physical and the genetic ancestral memory also is intertwined with that as well. And what that can potentially do is the consciousness, as it increases, it can open up more. And that's what I talked about at the beginning of the show, how we can go through physical changes in our spiritual evolution. That's mostly an overlooked aspect of it. We all talk about the conscious part of it, the energetic part of it. Like, yes, absolutely, that's going to happen. But through that, we see that the physical and the energetic are reciprocative. They work with each other. I mean, the physical is energy ultimately, right? So it's going to work with that aspect.
And what potentially happens is I agree with you. We could have, we do have all of that in us and encoded within us. And as we grow and as we still cultivate our divine bridge within us, what happens is we start to unlock more of that. And we start to unlock these deeper remembrances and realizations. And you know how some people, it's like, and here's even a good example. You know how some people just believe in like extraterrestrial or interdimensional beings? They just believe and they just know they exist and they just know. And then there's some people who don't believe it at all. Like, they think it's stupid, right? And one of the theories I have about that is because somewhere down the line or back in the line of their genetic lineage, one of their physical ancestors could have potentially come across something like that. And you have to think like, all right, we talk about like the trauma response, the somatic response, right? What if that individual came into contact with something, didn't know? Good one, Lonnie. It is the zeitgeist of the human soul. Good one, Lonnie. Yes. And, but if you had a ancestor of yours, come into contact with an extraterrestrial entity or an interdimensional entity, didn't quite understand it. I mean, even if the experience was pleasant with that entity, it's still going to leave some kind of response in you because you just freaking encountered something from another existence or another plane of existence that is not from where you're from. That's even if the experience is positive, it's still going to jar you to some degree. Like even my experience I had, like it was both of them have been amazingly positive, but it's something I'm never going to fucking forget. Because of how it went down. And and that ingrains itself into your DNA, that ingrains itself into your fascia, that ingrains it into your energetic system. And then that person, has kids, passes that on to that kid. And then that kid has kids, passes it on to that kid, vice versa. It goes down the line. And that's why you have some people who just, they don't need evidence. They know that these beings exist. Like they just know. They have this deep knowing within them. And I think a lot of it has to do with that. And what also can happen too is, through your conscious evolution and your expansion of your consciousness, you can start to activate more of that ancestral genetic DNA, and and the possibilities for your potential future outcomes as well. And I mean, ultimately, though, one of my things is you have the forever present, and that's something what you do presently is going to affect that. So definitely. I mean, I agree with you. I do think that is the case. I think it's kind of goes hand in hand with the conscious expression, the expression of the consciousness of the soul, which filters down through the DNA, and then we have that reciprocated effect. We have our awakening, and so it's like we send that reciprocation back to our higher self, our highest monadic self, the soul. And then the reciprocative process begins. Our freaking higher self's like, okay, he's waking up. Let's open up more of this for him. He's going to start to experience this on a deeper level. And so yes, I do think so, and I think it kind of goes hand in hand with both the spiritual and the physical.
I think that's probably the best explanation. Oh, what's Lonnie got here? Boom. All people experience
exactly.
Uncanny Valley effect, where things that look almost human freak people out, makes one wonder what happened in the distant past that ingrained it. Yeah,
absolutely. That's just what I was talking about, Lonnie. Exactly.
Lonnie is just on fire.
He's doing, yeah, man, yeah. But no, that's exactly it. I mean, yes, and that's why when people see things that look almost human but not slightly, it's jarring to us, and that probably is because in our earlier days as humans, I mean, even if we're going by the consensual version of history, the main narrative of history in our earlier days as humans, it's very possible we encountered something along those lines, and that could have imprinted on us collectively. I mean, you look at you look at the stories of the Anunnaki, the Elohim, all of that stuff. Even diving into ancient aliens, is it possible that many different races could have visited us? Absolutely, man. It's very possible. So yeah, I'm with Lonnie on that. It is kind of like the uncanny valley effect, but you also have the different, you have some that people that get freaked out by it, and maybe down in the line of their genetic lineage they had a negative experience with it that could have led that. But then you also have the case of the positive, where you have people, like I was saying, they just believe. They don't need proof. They just know it's there, and they have this deep knowing that it's there. You can't shake them, and that's probably because somewhere back down the line, they had an experience with an otherworldly entity or an interdimensional being of some kind in their ancestry. And, that is what has fostered that knowing within them genetically.
I think that's about the best way to sum that up. Yeah, because like,
Thanks, man. Yeah.
because you've been on part of this experience of my understanding and my remembering, like the amount of gnosis that I've gotten just slapped in the head with, like it is bizarre, the understanding that we do have in ourselves. Like it's just insane.
Absolutely, man. Well, here's the thing, man. Like, and this is why I like the term remembering instead of awakening. And I use the term, first you awaken, then you start remembering. Right? Because ultimately, you are already your higher self. You already are. You're just remembering your way back to it. And basically, you've heard, even, I don't know if it was Alan Watts or who said, but it's like, all you're doing is remembering everything you already know here. Right. And so that's why I like the term remembering better than awakening, because it's, member berries, you remember Spinja? No, I'm just kidding. You remember Spinja? And no, it's it is. You're ultimately remembering all of this, and that's why, like, we have, like you were saying, Don, like the knowings, like the knowing, and the remembering is it goes hand in hand with the knowing. And that's ultimately, if you look at all of the near death experiences, and this is why we should be grateful that we have the knowing, and this shows us that we're on the right path with our spiritual evolution as far as the knowing goes, is because if you look at a lot of these people who were not spiritually awakened at all, like before their near death experience, and then they had a near-death experience, one of the biggest things they talk about is just having a knowing. Like, they knew, like they just had a knowing of everything. It was not even a thought process within them. They just knew. And, kind of transfer that into us, people like us who have already tapped into that knowing while we're still alive. And that's something also to take. That's a beautiful thing, man, because most people, dude, in their whole life, the average person, they don't even tap into this knowing until they leave this plane of existence. But here we are, and we've tapped into this knowing while we're still here in this plane of existence. And ultimately it is, and that's why it's a remembering. It's because we already know it. And of course, you'll have, Don, of course, sure, you've experienced this before. You've had, you'll realize something and you'll be like, holy crap, like I've known this all along. Like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the exact like response you get from it. You're like, I've known this. I've already known it, and that's why it hits, and it has that resonation within you, is because you've already known. So, and that's really the ultimate thing I want to say too, is like, be grateful that in this life, for those of you who have the knowing, be grateful that you did it while you're still here, and be grateful that you've cultivated this remembrance in you while you're still here. And of course, Spinja, anytime. Yeah. And but that's what it comes down to, man. Like, even what you said, downloads, we all get downloads, man. Like, and we'll integrate the download, and we're like, oh yeah, like that makes complete and total sense. Like, and that's that knowing within us. So, and that's ultimately a gift. So, and we should see it as such.
I think that is a wonderful way to bring this all together. Unless you have something else that you'd like to close out on, I think that's the sentiment I'd like to end it on.
Absolutely, man. Well, I mean, yeah, we can close it on that, but also, one of the biggest things I guess I could leave everybody here with tonight
is understand that quite literally your entire destiny, quite literally every aspect about you, every god damn it, Spencer, every snooze to the nooch, bro. Jay and Silent Bob. Like quite literally everything is in your hands, man. Not everything's hyper complex in this world. All right. Your health is not hyper complex. Like, you have the ability to take literally the steering wheel for every single facet of your life. You know what I mean? You quite literally have the ability to do that. And stop falling prey to thinking everything's hyper complex. Stop letting the spells be casted on you, and stop allowing the you to accept these spells. Okay, if you keep a positive mindset and choose happiness every day, and you have some kind of meditation practice and you exercise at least a few times a week, you're ultimately always going to stay healthy. Always. Also, too, like we just said, look at yourself for having this knowing about you and be grateful for it and celebrate it. Because like I just said, there's a lot of people that had to die to figure out the knowing. And here we are still alive on this dangerous, irresistible pastime of the human experience. And we have the knowing. We're still alive. So that's something to be grateful for and something to celebrate.
Absolutely, and brilliantly said. So, where can everybody find you and all your wonderful information?
All right, man. Well, of course, as you know, Don's on the Forbidden Knowledge Network. I am also on the Forbidden Knowledge Network. We are FKN cohorts, colleagues, and friends, man. So, yes, always check out the Forbidden Knowledge Network, www.forbiddenknowledge.news. Support the documentaries from both Chris and Ryder. Original content made with a lot of heart and no narrative. So, definitely that. You can also find me on all major podcast platforms. Spotify, Spreaker, Rockfin, Apple, all of that under BGcast. You can find me on YouTube and Rumble under BGcast. And you can find me on all social, minus Facebook now. But you can find me on X and Instagram at BGcast. And I decided to put Facebook down. I'm just the shadow ban was too unreal there. I wasn't getting anywhere with it. So, but you can still find me on X and Instagram. And I'm also working on a couple of other projects. So as you saw in the chat, and she's been on Don's show, Diana, we have formed the Church of True Christ. What we are trying to do is bring real Christ back into this existence. One of the things, if you have seen my show, I've done 3 episodes on the Bible and the pre-Nicene rabbit hole. It's been kind of a thing of mine. I feel like, what true Christ is very different from what we see as modern Christianity today. And so, yes, Diana and I are doing Church of True Christ. We have our Sunday ministries every Sunday at 10 a.m. on X and YouTube. On the Church of True Christ channel. So if you guys want to go over there and give that a follow and help us out and help us get the ball rolling on this, that would be awesome. And other than that, man, I'm working on starting a business. I've taken your advice, Don. I've taken your and Spinch's advice. I've taken Diana's advice. I've taken other people's advice too. And I'm starting a life coaching and Kriya yoga workshop business. So that'll be dropping here in the future soon. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm up to, guys. And thank you for having me back on After Dark, man. It was a great time. As always, I feel like we got, I feel like we covered a lot of things, man. I hope I helped out with the natural DMT releases. I hope I set everybody up with a good guide for it, man. And of course, I have a new saying on BGcast. I say, stay safe, stay free, but most importantly, stay sovereign. And I mean that to everybody who's listening and watching right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we got to get talking about doing some yoga, because I don't know if we want to do it online or share it with everybody or what, but I'm definitely interested in at least getting the basics. And I think no better instructor than the friend I've never met. So,
oh, thanks, man. Of course. Well, dude, if you got a couple minutes when you get off, I'll run you through some basics. And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and of course, guys, like, I mean, if that's something you're interested in, if you want, you know, I joke and I say, you know, a lot of people call me the spokesperson for Kundalini yoga and Kriya yoga, but I'm going to tell you what, man, don't knack it till you try it. And everybody I know that has tried it and who's heard about it from me, and I've sent them to different channels and they've tried it, they always come back and they're like, dude, you're absolutely right. Like, holy shit, why have I not been doing this before? And I mean, that was my first thing, the first time I did a Kundalini Kriya set. I walked out of it like, dude, where's this been all my life? Like, why haven't I done this before? So yeah, if you guys want any help on that, just feel free to drop me a line.
Awesome. And like I always say, if you can go outside, please do, because it's a lot better than sitting in front of a screen. I love you guys.
Take care, man.
And